It is February 1519. 11 ships sit anchored off the coast of Cuba. On board, 600 soldiers, 16 horses, and a man who has just been stripped of his legal authority to sail. His commanding officer has ordered him to stand down. The expedition is canceled. The man ignores the order. He gives the signal. The ships sail before dawn. His name is Hernán Cortés, and he is sailing towards something that will change the world forever, even though he has almost no idea what it is. 1519, the year 600 men landed on the shores of a continent they barely understood and began the destruction of the most powerful civilization in the Americas. By the end of this video, you will understand why 1519 is not just the year the Aztec Empire fell. It is the year that reveals how empires actually end, not always from outside force, but from within, from the cracks that already existed, from the things a civilization chose to believe about itself and about the strangers who arrived at its borders. The vault is open. To understand 1519, you have to understand what the Aztec Empire actually was. Not the Hollywood version, the real one. The Aztec Empire, properly called the Triple Alliance, was the dominant power in Mesoamerica. Its capital city, Tenochtitlan, sat on an island in the middle of a lake in the Valley of Mexico. It was connected to the mainland by massive causeways. It had aqueducts, botanical gardens, a zoo, a vast market that contemporary Spanish observers said was larger and more organized than anything in Europe. The population of Tenochtitlan alone was estimated at 200,000 to 300,000 people, making it one of the 5 largest cities on Earth at the time. London in 1519 had approximately 50,000 people. Paris had perhaps 150,000. Tenochtitlan dwarfed them both. This was not a primitive society. This was a sophisticated, militarized, administratively complex empire that dominated millions of people across hundreds of miles of territory. But the Aztec Empire had a weakness that Cortés would exploit with devastating precision. The empire ruled through fear and tribute. Conquered peoples paid heavily in goods, in labor, and in human lives for ritual sacrifice. The scale of this sacrifice was staggering. At the dedication of the great temple of Tenochtitlan in 1487, Aztec accounts claim that thousands of captives were sacrificed over 4 days. The tributary states resented the Aztec center with a hatred that ran deep and had been building for generations. These were not willing subjects. They were captive peoples waiting for an opportunity. When Cortés arrived on the coast of Mexico in April 1519, he did not find a unified civilization standing together against a foreign invader. He found a continent full of people who hated the Aztecs and who were willing, even eager, to help destroy them. Cortés was not a great soldier in the traditional sense. He was a lawyer turned adventurer, charismatic, politically ruthless, and extraordinarily skilled at reading situations and people. He understood within weeks of landing that the key to conquering the Aztec Empire was not Spanish military superiority. 600 men against millions was never going to work on those terms. The key was alliance. The Tlaxcalans, a fiercely independent people who had resisted Aztec domination for generations, were his most important find. After initially fighting the Spanish, the Tlaxcalans made a strategic calculation. The strangers, with their horses and metal weapons and incomprehensible technology, were powerful. The Aztecs were hated. The alliance was made. Cortés now had thousands of indigenous allies. He also had something else, something the Aztec Emperor Moctezuma II could not stop thinking about. There was an ancient Aztec prophecy, or at least a story that functioned as one, concerning the god Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent. According to various accounts, Quetzalcoatl had left the Aztec world long ago and was prophesied to return from the east in a one-reed year. The year 1519 in the Aztec calendar was a one-reed year. When Cortés arrived from the east with his pale skin and his metal armor and his horses, animals the Aztecs had never seen, Moctezuma faced an impossible question. Was this man a god returning, or a man to be destroyed? His hesitation was catastrophic. He sent gifts. He sent emissaries. He received Cortés with extraordinary hospitality. And in November 1519, he allowed the Spanish into Tenochtitlan itself. Cortés had 400 soldiers with him. He was inside the largest city in the Americas. He was surrounded by hundreds of thousands of people who could have killed every Spaniard in the city in an afternoon. Moctezuma did not give the order. Instead, Cortés took him prisoner. In his own palace, in his own city. The most powerful ruler in the Americas, taken hostage by 400 foreign soldiers while his court watched. The psychological devastation of this moment cannot be overstated. The Aztec Emperor was the center around which the entire political and religious order rotated. With Moctezuma captured and controlled, the Spanish effectively controlled the empire. For months, this bizarre arrangement held. Then everything collapsed at once. A Spanish force arrived from Cuba sent to arrest Cortés. He left Tenochtitlan to deal with them, leaving a small garrison behind. The garrison, fearing an attack, massacred a group of Aztec nobles during a religious festival. The city erupted. When Cortés returned, the Spanish were trapped inside Tenochtitlan, surrounded by a furious population. Moctezuma was killed. The Spanish said the crowd stoned him when he tried to calm them. The Aztecs said the Spanish strangled him. On what the Spanish called the Noche Triste, the Night of Sorrows, Cortés attempted to escape the city in the dark. Hundreds of Spanish soldiers and thousands of Tlaxcalan allies died in the causeway fighting, weighed down by the gold they refused to leave behind. Cortés himself reportedly sat under a tree the following morning and wept. He was not finished. He retreated to Tlaxcala, reorganized his forces, and spent months recruiting more indigenous allies who joined in enormous numbers. The opportunity to destroy the Aztecs was too valuable to pass up. He had ships built in pieces, carried overland across mountains by thousands of indigenous laborers, and reassembled on the lake surrounding Tenochtitlan. The logistics of this operation alone were extraordinary. 13 brigantines constructed inland and transported piece by piece to a lake their builders had never seen. The siege lasted 75 days. When the Spanish and their allies finally entered the city in August 1521, they found a population devastated not just by war, but by smallpox, a European disease against which the indigenous population had no immunity whatsoever. The last Aztec emperor, Cuauhtémoc, was captured while trying to escape by canoe. When asked where the Aztec gold was, he reportedly pointed to Cortés's torture instruments and said, "Do you think I am on a bed of roses?" Tenochtitlan, the greatest city in the Americas, was destroyed so completely that modern Mexico City was built on top of its ruins. Its stones became Spanish churches. Its causeways became roads. Its lake was drained over centuries until it disappeared entirely. So, what is 1519? It is the year that reveals the most uncomfortable truth about conquest. Cortés did not defeat the Aztec Empire. He provided the spark that allowed the empire's own enemies to destroy it. Of the estimated 200,000 to 300,000 casualties in the fall of Tenochtitlan, the vast majority were killed by indigenous allies of the Spanish, not by Spanish soldiers themselves. The Tlaxcalans, the Texcocans, the dozens of other tributary states that had suffered under Aztec rule, they destroyed the empire. The Spanish provided the technology, the leadership, and the disease. The disease did more damage than any weapon. Estimates suggest that within 100 years of contact, the indigenous population of Mexico had fallen from perhaps 25 million people to under 2 million. Not primarily through warfare, through illness against which they had no defense and no warning. 1519 is the year two worlds collided. One of them did not survive the collision. And the collision was not decided by swords or horses or even by the brilliance of one Spanish lawyer turned adventurer. It was decided by something invisible that nobody in 1519, not Cortés, not Moctezuma, not the Tlaxcalans, had any way to understand. History's most devastating weapons are sometimes the ones nobody sees coming. 1519, 600 men, 16 horses, an empire of millions. 3 years later, the empire was gone. The city that was greater than any in Europe was rubble. A civilization that had existed for centuries was reduced to a fraction of itself within a generation. Cortés returned to Spain eventually, laden with gold and titles and stories. He spent his final years in legal disputes, largely ignored by the crown he had enriched beyond calculation. The Tlaxcalans who had helped him, who had genuinely believed the Spanish alliance would free them from Aztec domination, found themselves under a different empire, paying different tribute to different masters. History does not always reward those who help make it. If this story made you think, leave a comment. Was Cortés a genius or a monster? Were the Tlaxcalans betrayed, or did they make the best choice available to them? Subscribe to the Vault of Numbers. Every week, one number, one story history forgot to tell you. The next number in the vault? 79. A city stood in the shadow of a mountain for centuries. Nobody left. Nobody warned them. Then, one afternoon, the mountain answered. The vault remains open.